Hi, my name is Simon Jacobson, and I would like to share some thoughts that I have around feedback in a professional setting. So, feedback is intended to improve collaboration and communication for the benefit of everyone involved. If you have feedback that you want to share with someone, the polite and respectful way of approaching it is often by saying, I have some feedback that I would love to share with you, and maybe this could be part of more of a mutual back and forth where we talk about our recent collaboration. When would be a good time for you to discuss this together? Giving the other person a bit of a heads up, because if you just spring unsolicited feedback onto someone, it can often backfire quite spectacularly in some cases. While it can be really scary to get feedback, it's also something that can be scary to give, especially if you're in a new working relationship or if you haven't established the communication channels. Therefore, if you are the recipient of feedback, try to be mindful of this, and you can listen, try to avoid being confrontational or defensive. And if there's something that's unclear to you, you can ask for follow-up and clarification in neutral language. Feedback in its purest form is a gift meant to improve a collaboration. If someone gives you feedback, you say thank you. And then to the extent that you can, you internalize the feedback, you contemplate why the person is telling you this, and then you can either implement whatever feedback they gave you and try to change your ways, or you can say thank you and then quietly discard the message if you feel like this is not relevant to what I'm trying to do, whatever it is. But that's an internal process. You don't necessarily need to judge the quality of the feedback as it is being given to you. For feedback to be useful and helpful, it's important that it's honest and direct. And it's distinctly different from insults, derogatory comments, personal attacks, those sorts of things. Feedback focuses on a productive future collaboration. It focuses on behaviors over personality traits or character. It focuses on improvements rather than punishment. It treats the recipient of the feedback as having equal potential as the sender of the feedback. Good feedback is a two-way street, so it focuses on the ongoing dialogue as opposed to the one-way communication. And opposed to being vague and more general, good feedback is specific. There's a good feedback framework called SMART. The S stands for specific, relating to a particular instance or an action or an event or a behavior that is descriptive without leaving too much space for interpretation. So for example, in the meeting this morning, you said X 4 times. M stands for measurable, meaning that there is some way of verifying how you're progressing from the current state to the ideal state. You can track your progress. So you give a person feedback and you're able to see whether they are following up on the feedback or they are able to see it themselves. A stands for actionable, meaning that there is a clear action that you can take. And as the sender of the feedback, you can offer tips and support for how to get there. So saying, for next time, try doing this, and here's what I mean when I say that, or here are a few tips that could be helpful along the way. R stands for relevant, meaning that the feedback pertains to a shared stated outcome or a goal or a task that you're working on together. T stands for time bound. Give the person you're giving feedback to a reasonable timeline for actually taking the feedback on board and demonstrating a changed behavior, but also give them not so much time that you can never follow up and not so little time that you end up discouraging them rather than motivating them. You want to give people feedback on equal terms. Give people a heads up, allow for a back and forth, a dialogue, some sort of response. There might be something that justifies or explains the behavior that you were unaware of as the feedback giver. It's also good to give feedback in a more neutral setting or at a neutral time. It's not great to give feedback to someone, even if it's intended to be constructive, if it's in the heat of the moment or something big just happened. Take a little break, come back to it later. It's for the benefit of everyone. Clarify the context for the feedback and share the criteria for what good looks like, so you can agree on, yeah, we want to get to here, and the feedback is a stepping stone towards achieving that goal. The most effective way of delivering feedback is from person to another person. If the recipient of the feedback feels like they're being ganged up on, it's a quick recipe for disaster, feeling ostracized or shutting down or not listening or discarding all feedback that's coming their way. Giving and receiving feedback is a bit like building a muscle. So if it's something that you do early and often before problems go from minor annoyance to huge concern, it makes it a little bit easier, lowers the threshold for how you can communicate effectively within your team. Another framework is the AID framework, where A stands for action. Here's what I observed happened. I stands for impact. So when you said the thing, it made me feel like this, or I observed this, or it led to the person saying X. D stands for desired action. For next time, try using this word instead, or take this action instead, or come to me before you go to them, or let's collaborate more closely, or let's work more separately, or whatever it may be. There should be some sort of desired action as a consequence of the feedback. When giving feedback, it's important to speak for yourself only. There's a concept called the I message, essentially saying that you should root each observation in yourself. Here's what I saw. Here's what it made me feel. When you did this, I felt like this. You can't speak for others. So saying, we feel like this, or we think this, is, again, it doesn't necessarily give the recipient of the feedback a fair way of responding, because all of a sudden, instead of responding to you, the giver of the feedback, they're trying to respond to a more diffuse group of people where they don't really know where the accountability lies. Be fair to the person you're giving feedback to, and root any observation, any feedback in yourself only. And similarly, if you bring up hearsay or gossip, it's another way of turning what could be a productive feedback session into something that is experienced as a personal attack. We've established that feedback is a gift. A good way of making it feel like a gift is by demonstrating that you care. So you can, before you give the person any feedback at all, remind yourself, or better yet, remind the person of qualities that you really appreciate about them, about something that they've done really well, or other actions that they've taken where you've seen excellent results or an excellent collaboration. Start there, and then you can start to say, therefore, I have some feedback for how we elevate this collaboration to something that is even better. There's also something to be said around being humble and taking clear accountability and apologizing for hurting the person's feelings or causing some sort of a breakdown in the collaboration, whether that's actual, perceived, or even just possible. It doesn't necessarily matter. If you demonstrate that you are the type of person who is willing to take accountability for things when they are tough, it builds trust in you, and it makes people feel like they can trust you more because you are reasonable, you can make concessions and compromises in a way that makes them want to work more closely with you. My personal reflection after many years of giving and receiving feedback that has been both positive, negative, constructive, sometimes not so constructive, is that there is no perfect framework to substitute the trust you build as part of an ongoing collaboration where you mutually make it clear that you care about the collaboration, you care about the other person, you care about the other people, and you want to get to a good outcome. No acronym, SMART, AID framework will ever replace that. But knowing these things can make you a more effective communicator and collaborator, and it can help with building trust by considering the other person's perspective and also considering how you frame your thoughts. It can take something that could have been, personal attack and turning it into a moment for mutual growth, and where you both feel like I'm better off for this interaction, and that other person has a lot of integrity, which is ultimately where you want to get to, a place where you feel unity and camaraderie and a stronger collaboration instead of something that potentially even harms the collaboration.